when it comes to reinforcing that core, that positional integrity that we've talked so much about, your mind probably instantly goes to a plank, which there's really nothing wrong with. I introduce planks and program them all the time because I think it's a great movement and it touches the ground. And anytime we can touch the ground, I'm a big fan of it. But when you really think about reinforcing that strength, that positional integrity, that core, there's so much more that we can adventure off to. The core is so much more than just a plank.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one that's really popular right now that we're definitely fans of are carries.
Yep, absolutely.
So we think about like our traditional farmer carry. Not only are we resisting a lot of gravitational forces, typically we do a bilateral load. We're also training grip strength, which it's worth mentioning is absolutely essential in the tactical setting.
Yep.
Now that said, also look at the demands of the job, which means sometimes this load needs to be offset or maybe just unilateral. We could even go bilateral, but heavier on one side than the other. Not only that, we can go to different type of positions, right? So we can take this into a front rack position. A big one that's often overlooked is overhead.
Yeah.
Because going overhead is really going to challenge the integrity of what's going on below it that has to support this position. And remember too, we're talking about carries, not just holds. And so what we have is some dynamic movement through part of the body while staying static through another part. So kind of that disassociation of dynamic movement and strength.
So as a coach, we've zoomed into the core. We've talked about the planks, the dead bugs, stuff like that. But as you zoom out and you start to look at these dynamic movements, don't get carried away with the appendages and really start to focus on with what's going in with all of this area. Like Nate mentioned, like what does our body do to compromise those positions? But most importantly, carries, locomotion, great. But let's just think about the general strength movements that we program. Something as simple as a deadlift.
Yes.
Think about how much the core is involved with those cues that we talked about of just a simple movement of picking something up off the floor and standing up, or something as simple as a goblet squat, staying upright and controlled through your posture as you descend deep into the hips.
Yeah, and you could take those exact same movements and start to add power to them, right? So we could talk a kettlebell swing, something along those lines. We can make it one-sided, go overhead into a snatch. Like, quite literally, the possibilities are endless here.
The funny thing with this is no one would define a kettlebell swing as a core movement.
Probably not.
But when you really start to unpack that word, you really start to realize that the core is so much more than just a plank.